And there we saw, I'm not sure if it was one person, I am not sure if it was multiple persons, but what we saw was Secret Service and law enforcement agents swarm that area in particular and then escort someone out of that area. So we have no idea necessarily what exactly happened during that time. We know that there were people that were just getting down during that moment, and there were screams. Then it took several minutes. First, we saw the former president being rushed out. Obviously, what we saw was the former president. You've seen those images. He stood up, he put his fist up, and it was a sign and signal that he was okay. The crowd then cheered. And then after the former president was rushed into his own vehicle and that vehicle was taken away, then we saw that separate area clear where Secret Service agents and law enforcement agents had surrounded possibly another individual, and that person was then taken away. It was only then did we start to see the crowd sort of clear. And there was this sort of moment where people didn't necessarily know what exactly to do, whether or not it was safe to leave. People were looking around, asking if it was okay. We're hearing helicopter right now. You can see it there that's taking off right now. And then we saw law enforcement officials. They came out. They started putting crime scene tape to rope off that area. Members of the press, we were sort of the last ones that were escorted out and told to leave. We were told to leave everything behind. But there were certainly these moments where people were just very confused, didn't know exactly what happened, and were rushing to just sort of exit the area as Secret Service and law enforcement officials were trying to block off the area where this occurred with.
All right, Rachel Scott for us again with those remarkable moments as they played out. These images as well with the former president pumping his fist, what appears to be, again, we're not sure, can't confirm, but what appears to be blood dripping down his face, and the cheers of the crowd as Donald Trump got back up onto his feet and was then led away by the Secret Service. Let's bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, who's been watching all of this. And Pierre, time and time again, and you've been talking about the political threat level, the environment in this country for months. Again, still a lot of information that we're waiting to get here, Pierre. But talk about what your law enforcement sources are telling you. And we're also getting more information about the former president's condition.
Indeed. I've talked to a number of sources, and the one thing that they're fairly comfortable saying is that they do not believe that former President Trump sustained any sort of life-threatening injury. They are being very careful about what they can release until they can get a more full accounting. Officials in Washington reaching out to the authorities there. We're told that the White House has been briefed. President Biden has been briefed. The Homeland Security Secretary is waiting additional information as well. So right now, law enforcement is converging, trying to get information because, as you said, the threat environment right now is critically high. Law enforcement super worried about the potential of violence, and they're being careful right now because they don't have all the details. But that has been in the backdrop for days now. Security for the conventions will be super high, in part because of concerns about incidents like this, whatever this turns out to be.
And Pierre, to your point, it's worth pointing out the respect we got from a Trump spokesperson too, because they said that President Trump, after thanking law enforcement and first responders, they said they called it a heinous act, but they did say that the former president is fine and being checked out at a local medical facility. Pierre Thomas, stand by for us. I want to go back to John Carl. John, I understand you're getting word from the governor of Pennsylvania.
Yes, we're getting a wide range of reaction. And before I get to that, I just want to reiterate, playing off of what Pierre just said, the statement that we heard from the Secret Service, very important because this is the bottom line here. The Secret Service has implemented protective measures and the former president is safe. So yes, no life-threatening wounds. The former president is safe. That's what we're hearing from the Secret Service. That's what we're hearing from the Trump campaign. We are also hearing from the governor of Pennsylvania, who, by the way, is a Democrat, the Governor Josh Shapiro. He's been briefed on the situation as the governor where this all took place, and he has put out a statement saying violence targeted at any political party or political and for any political party is absolutely unacceptable. It has no place in Pennsylvania or in the United States. By the way, we're hearing from several others in the political world. Democratic Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, saying violence has no place in our democracy. My thoughts are with President Trump. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, another Democrat. There's no place, country, partisan concern for former President Trump and condemning whatever has happened here. Steve Scalise, this one's also interesting as you remember, Congressman Steve Scalise, the number two Republican in the House, himself was shot at a practice for a congressional baseball game 7 years ago, sustained very serious injuries, was really touch and go for some time. He put out a statement saying, I'm praying for President Donald Trump. There's never any place for political violence. So as you can see, across the political spectrum, condemnations of whatever has happened here, concerns for the former president, and the bottom line, former President Trump, all indications is now safe and no life-threatening injuries here.
Hey, John, can I follow up on that? Because I do think that the wording here is interesting from the various statements that we're getting. That statement saying the former president is safe. The Trump spokesperson saying the former president is fine. What they're not saying here is that he was not hurt or injured in any way. Again, we're still waiting for these details coming in. We're trying to kind of, read between the lines here. And we don't want to speculate, but you work with the Trump campaign all the time and communicating with them. What does that say to you about this level of communication right now?
Well, frankly, my sense is that the Trump campaign is doing, the individuals there that we're speaking to are basically doing exactly what we're trying to do here, which is to get more information. And in a situation like this, the first priority for the Secret Service is to make sure the president is safe, to get him to safety, and then to treat him. Their first priority is not getting us information. So we've gotten the very basic information, which is that he is safe. They have implemented further protective measures, and that the injuries here are not life-threatening. But beyond that, we just don't know. And frankly, I think even those very close to Donald Trump at this point are trying to get further detail about exactly what happened and how he's doing.
All right, John Carl, we're going to go to John Santucci now, who I know has been communicating with the Trump campaign. John, you were with us earlier. What more are you learning tonight?
So right now, what I can tell you that members of Donald Trump's family, so far as I understand, that have not spoken to the former president directly, according to my sources. They have been receiving calls and updates from people that were on the ground with the former president, and also, I'm told, received briefings from the Secret Service. Remember, these are, in some cases, as we were talking about earlier with John Carl, the fact that Donald Trump has had Secret Service protection for so many years, so many of these agents have been around the former president, his children for nearly a decade. So there is a very close relationship, and thus I do think that's part of the reason why the family has been getting such, up-to-minute information, if you will. I can also tell you that for the most part, there is a bit of a sigh of relief, if you will, in the sense that everyone is being told that same word, he's fine. Of course, that image causing alarm that many people within Donald Trump's inner orbit that were not physically with him. And I do think that's really important, as we spoke about earlier. That normally many members of the president's family usually join him for these events, but of course, so many of them are either getting ready to or already on the ground out in Milwaukee preparing for the start of the Republican convention. I will just say a little bit, because I think it's important, and you and I talked about this earlier, as much as Donald Trump loves this rally, I have been told by sources for the last week, Donald Trump has been in one of the best moods of late, and it's in part because of all the speculation and attention that this rally was getting, because this was the rally with, as you know, we reported at one point, it was possible that Donald Trump was going to reveal But I also Trump said he wanted all of our years of covering Donald Trump. These are the events he loves the most. He thrives off of the crowd, the audience, and he'll often say, "Yeah, Commissioner." We must stress these events are so guarded by the Secret Service, and anybody that comes into them, of course, going through magnetometers, going through screening. But I think that you are going to have to imagine, even for Donald Trump, who takes his own personal security very, the prized possession, very careful, always listens to the Secret Service. I would be very curious, of course, now leaning into those reports and what I'm hearing from my sources that he's fine, how a Donald Trump rally changes going forward. And you have at rallies of Donald Trump. People have yelled things. I was at a rally once, I'm almost positive it was in Las Vegas, where someone yelled "gun," and the president, at that time, candidate Trump, was rushed off stage in 2016. But never have we seen something like this that has caused such a scare, such an alarm for the former president and his family.
Yeah, regardless of what happened here, as we're watching these images come through, they are quite remarkable and frightening, given the political environment that we've been in lately. Let's go back to the White House, because Mary Alice Parks, I understand you're getting word from Hakeem.
We just saw a statement. Obviously from the highest ranking Democrat there, and President is okay, and law enforcement, like Hakeem Jeffrey said, therefore their sort of decisive response. I can tell you that here on the White House campus, Secret Service very tight-lipped, which is their standard posture. They don't talk to us about security protocol. That's a part of their protocol to keep their plans to themselves. That's a part of how they keep presidents safe. The White House campus is not on lockdown. There are still tours going on, as is often the case on the weekends. I can tell you they've pushed back the perimeter at the White House. There's not protesters or tourists walking on Pennsylvania Avenue, but that happens from time to time, and the Secret Service would not confirm that they did that in response to this incident, but I will tell you it happened right around the same time. The press that's traveling with the president in Delaware said that they noticed what seemed to them to be a heightened security protocol with the president at Delaware. In Delaware, he's at his residence there at Rehoboth Beach. That's to be expected. I would imagine there would be absolutely a heightened protocol, though the president is so guarded. But like I said, the Secret Service does not normally talk to us about their plans, how they work to keep the president safe. And at this point, they are being very tight-lipped about what happened.
Yeah, again, unclear exactly what the heightened protocol is, but we definitely know that when an incident like this happens across the board, we see changes made to law enforcement and additional protections to some of the people who they deem might be vulnerable in a moment like this. Let's go back to Rachel Scott, who's still there in Pennsylvania. Rachel, I understand you've been speaking with people who are at the rally with you.
Yeah, and these two Trump supporters are just making their way out. Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sound and you got down.
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued. It continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down!" We got down, and we huddled, and we started praying. And we just started praying, and thank God, a little while later, we got up. When we saw other people get up, we saw Trump get up, raise his fist like I'm okay, and we kept praying. We kept praying, but I got a birthday card to Trump right before his birthday, Flag Day, and right before I said I got a card to him. Security was going to give it to him here, and it in the card it said that George Washington.
So you kept praying, and what about you? How did you feel when you heard those sounds? What did you do?
I felt really bad. I'm worried about our grandchildren. What kind of life are they going to have if this goes on, if people don't have the right to say what they want?
You told me that you were near the very front. You weren't very far.
No, we were like from here to where that thing is.
And you got down, you said you got down immediately?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody yelled, get down. My daughter-in-law, Lisa, she said for us to hurry up and get down. And she called her husband because he was standing right by the pole, and he got down also. We were just, it's a scary situation. Like that. I mean, you don't have our, you don't, how can I say it? You have to have God in your heart to be able to have freedom and everything. But this was just sad for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It was.
Well, we're happy you both are okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Please get home safe. And so that is just a little bit of the reaction and some of what we've been actually hearing from a lot of the Trump supporters. Those two people that I just talked to, one woman told me that she was here with her family. They were very close to this. She said that she just found get down, and they said immediately they just started praying, hoping that everything was going to be okay. They were in the front. They are just now, it's been I believe it's been over a half an hour. They are just now being able to escort out of this area, partially because you had a lot of the elderly people who gather here, elderly Trump supporters who sat in those front rows are just sort of making their way out now, being escorted out. But everyone that I've been talking to, as they're leaving, they're still shaken up. They're asking us if we know what had happened. Everyone's checking on each other, asking if one another is okay. This is a crowd that's still visibly shaken up. And I think that she made a really good point, Whit, because at these rallies, the former president's podium is not far away from the crowd. Donald Trump is someone who loves a big crowd. He loves these rallies. He wants to feel his supporters very close to him. And so those pops were very ringing for a lot of those Trump supporters that were there. We all heard them. Our press riser was not very far off as well. And then immediately everyone just took cover until we were able to finally get up and leave that area with.
Rachel Scott, once again, and while we don't know exactly what happened, we do know for sure it was a frightening and chaotic moment for all the people who were there. And Rachel bringing that to us from those witnesses who were in the crowd, talking about getting down on the ground and praying and hoping for the best. Let's bring in our ABC News contributor, Reince Priebus, of course, former head of the RNC, also former chief of staff under former President Trump. And Reince, just your take on these images and what you're seeing today and what people within the Trump campaign are telling you now. Reince Priebus, this is Whit in New York. Can you hear me? All right, forgive us. We're having some technical difficulties as we're trying to reach Reince Priebus. Let's go back to John Karl once again in Milwaukee, our chief Washington correspondent. John's there ready to cover the Republican National Convention. The news, John, in the next 48 hours was supposed to be who was going to be former President Trump's running mate. And we were going over the short list of candidates, who it could be. And there was so much attention around this event. There was the possibility that Trump could hint to his possible pick, and a lot of people were watching this very closely, and now this horrific incident playing out.
And by the way, separately, with this event is one of the most secure places in the country right now, as they have basically fortified the entire area for several blocks around this convention center. And what we just noticed over the last 10 minutes or so is some kind of apparently military helicopter kind of circling above. I'm sure this place is already secure before what happened today. But you can imagine the level of concern just got ramped up even more so. But look, this is a shocking event. I mentioned to you a short while ago that I was on the floor of the convention talking to the Republican National Committee chairman, Michael Whatley, when this news broke. He got a phone call, came in, and quickly rushed off the floor. Everybody trying to figure out what happened. We do have a full statement from the Trump campaign. We had some of this information earlier, but now a full statement from the Trump campaign saying President Trump thanks law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. He is fine, important words, he is fine and is being checked out at a local medical facility. More details to follow. That is from Steve Chung, a spokesperson for the Trump campaign. It matches what we have heard from the spokesperson for the Secret Service, saying that the former president is safe. The former president is safe. And it's very important to point out that we still at this point don't know exactly what happened. We don't even know for sure if the popping noise that everybody assumes confirmed that was gunfire. We saw that those incredibly dramatic pictures. We see the ear. I don't know from. I mean, there's a whole phalanx of Secret Service agents who are essentially jumping on him and bringing him down. It's quite possible he could have been injured in some way during the process of the Secret Service protecting him from more severe injury. So we just don't know. But the fact that this incident happened on live TV, that you hear the popping, that seems to be apparent gunfire. I have in my hands just a raft of statements from political leaders across the political spectrum condemning the very idea of political violence and hoping for the safety, praying for the safety of the former president, who we now hear both from the Secret Service and from his campaign appears to be safe and doing fine. One statement that came that has, I think, some resonance beyond the others is from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, of course, is mounting a third-party campaign for president. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, was old enough to see what happened to his father during the 1968 Democratic primary when he was assassinated just after the California primary. RFK Jr. putting out a statement saying, quote, "Now is the time for every American who loves our country to step back from the division, renounce all violence, and unite in prayer for President Trump and his family." That from Bobby Kennedy Jr. But again, bottom line, we hear from the campaign, the president is fine. Those were the campaign's words. From the Secret Service, the former president is safe.
John Carl, once again, thank you. I do want to go back to Rachel Scott, who's still there in Pennsylvania, outside the venue where all of this occurred. Rachel, you've been talking to witnesses, people who were there at that rally. What more are you hearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people are still mingling around here waiting to leave this area. This is Gabby. Gabby, you told me you were in the second row.
Yeah.
Describe what you saw.
I think I saw like all the like Secret Service like kind of cover Trump. They did a really good job about that, making sure he was protected, telling everyone to get down. So I think they did take a good care of like making sure everyone was like understanding what was going on and like being serious, but not freaking everybody out.
What was your initial reaction when you heard those popping noises?
To get down. Yeah. So I actually like my boyfriend pushed me on the ground and like went on top of me, which was like really nice. But I think a lot of people were a little like too shocked to understand what was going on originally, for sure. But I think everyone listened pretty well and it was handled pretty well.
Did you see some of that commotion that was playing out on the other side of the bleacher where we saw law enforcement agents sort of swarm around another individual, or did you ultimately just rush out?
No, we were there for a minute because they did tell us to go back down again just in case. I think that was good because it helped like calm people down. But I think one of the stands that I was next to, they did like carry out a man, and there was another one that might have been injured. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely one at least. And on the other stand on the other side, because I was on the right, on the left, there were like a bunch of like men in uniform like surrounding someone. So that was interesting to see.
You said that you were very impressed by the speed in which Secret Service was able to get on that stage within seconds of all of us hearing those popping sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a great job. I definitely felt protected in the situation. The sniper was on it, watching on guard. Everyone on the scene like did a great job. I mean, like, of course it was like nerve wracking in the moment, but I never felt like I was like in danger, which was cool. They were on the president, which I'm very thankful of. And they did a great job, like protecting him and getting him out as quick as possible. He is doing good, which is good. Yeah.
We all felt that moment for a minute where we all rushed down Yeah. We were all taking cover. And then it was panic that set in. And then after a minute, we all popped up and we saw the former president. He was being escorted off the stage and he kind of raised his fist, pumping it up in the air as he was being escorted off that riser and back into his vehicle. What did you make of that?
Actually, I had the honor of being right in front when they were escorting. So the exit that they were taking, I was right in front of, and I got to see him like putting his fist up and everything. That was really awesome to see. Like even relieved, also like having such a good, strong, like charisma about him, even in a hard time.
Yeah. Can I just ask you, now being on this end, we've been escorted out of this area. How are you feeling right now? I've been talking to a lot of people leaving. They're still a little shaken up about it, a little bit confused about what happened. Trump supporters come from all over the country to come to events like this. And within minutes, we heard those popping noises and that rally was over.
They did a great job escorting everybody. I mean, I'm probably one of the few that are like, I'm so glad I was here and got to witness this. I thought they did a great job and I was really appreciative of it. Any like security or police that I've seen, I've tried to like go up and congratulate them because like it's a hard job and like you have to be ready at any moment at all times, like that kind of thing. So it was really cool to like see them actually get to do their job, and they did a great job. And I mean, I'm still here for now. Gotta wait for my ride, but
Yeah.
I feel fine. Yeah, they did a good job.
Gabby, we so appreciate it. So that is just the scene that's playing out here. We still have a number of Trump supporters that are making their way out. There were obviously hundreds and hundreds of people here, so they're now clearing out. As I mentioned before, cell phone service can be a little tough in that area, so people are finally starting to get cell phone service, make their way back to their vehicles. But every Trump supporter that we have talked to sharing that sense of relief, hearing that the former president is okay, but also that sense of gratitude, Whit, for Secret Service, for law enforcement agents that were able to quickly rush in and take control of that situation with.
Well, Rachel, stand by because we're getting some significant developments right now. The district attorney of Butler County telling ABC News the shooter is dead. Also, there's more here saying that one bystander is confirmed dead and possibly a second bystander dead as well. So again, that's from the district attorney, Richard Goldinger of Butler County, telling ABC News the shooter is dead. So this is the first time that we've had any kind of confirmation from a law enforcement source that shots were fired. And now learning that there are potentially, again, according to the DA, some fatalities associated with this incident at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania. Let's go back to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, you've been talking to your law enforcement sources. This is a major event.
Well, clearly, if this information holds up from the district attorney, who is the chief prosecutor for that area, that a bystander is dead and that the so-called shooter is dead as well, greatly enhances the concern that law enforcement would have about this situation. We've been with the Secret Service in recent days, with working with them, looking at their security plan for both conventions, the RNC and the DNC convention. And I can tell you, one of the things that they wanted to put forth in the conversations with me is that they believed that the threat environment was quite dangerous and that all their training was geared toward dealing with events like this. They showed us the training of how they would move the president in the event of an attack. They showed what would happen if the president were fired on or if his motorcade were fired upon. They have drones that will be doing surveillance. So this has not been something in theory that they've been worried about. This has been an actual concern. And now that this has happened, law enforcement, which was already on a hair trigger, will now be at a threat level that we probably haven't seen in quite some time.
And Pierre, again, if this report is true, a shooter confirmed to be dead, a bystander as well, and potentially somebody else, I mean, this is going to raise major questions about what went wrong, how this could possibly happen in this heightened threat environment that you talked about, all the training, all the preparation, knowing the conventions are coming up. This would be a massive security failure.
How this could possibly happen. The question would be, what kind of security did they have for people in the crowd? You know, did they have magnetometers? You know, those kind of questions will need to be resolved and answered. And again, we don't yet know all the details of how this unfolded. You know, there are just so many scenarios where you could have law enforcement responding to the popping sound. So again, the Secret Service right now, their mode is protect, protect, protect. That was their primary concern, was to get the president out of harm's way, get him removed. Briefing us, getting information to us is so secondary, but Trust me, the Justice Department, FBI, all these different agencies are trying to get information so they can assess the threat environment and look at security across the board, because this is not going to be viewed just as an isolated incident. This potentially impacts everything going forward with.
And you see how quickly, again, our viewers looking at this video of the moment as it occurred, you see how quickly it happened. And initially, the reaction from the crowd, and one of the first things you see the former president do is reach for his right ear, then goes to the ground. And then you see this human shield of Secret Service agents jumping on top of him before they escorted him out. And at this, the immediate aftermath here, people are confused in the crowd, looking around, not clear what's going on. So major questions as we get more information tonight. But again, that from the district attorney, that it appears the shooter is dead and at least one bystander dead too. Oh, forgive me, I'm getting information as I'm coming on. We have Dave McCormick on the phone right now with us, who is at the rally. Yep. Running for Senator, and Dave, forgive me as I'm just getting this information. You were at the rally. If you could just walk us through what you heard and what you saw.
Yeah. Hi. Yes. I was. I'm the Republican nominee for the Senate in Pennsylvania. I was in the front row, and President Trump had just announced me and said he was going to come up on the stage. And said, well, wait a minute. And then there were a number of shots, I think probably 7 or 8 shots. It wasn't clear whether they would come from one place or 2 places, at least I couldn't tell. And immediately there was a swarm of Secret Service officers that, got on top of and knocked down President Trump and got on top of him. And then he stood back up and you sort of saw this fist come out, sort of defiant that it looked like he was okay, but you couldn't tell for sure. It looked like there was some blood, but it wasn't obvious. And then the entire crowd went to the ground because we weren't sure whether the shots were done. And then unfortunately, over my shoulder, someone had clearly been hit. I was on the ground, and up in the bleachers, probably 3 or 4 bleachers behind me. It looked like there was a man who was severely injured. There was a lot of blood, and his people around him were trying to administer first aid. And then the police, some police officers came in and carried him out, and presumably took him to get first aid. That's really all I could see. I don't know if there were other people injured, and I don't know if there was anybody apprehended, because as you might imagine, and once that happened, the crowd was very chaotic, and it was very hard to know what was going on. And we're still there at the rally, just sitting trying to get out because the traffic is so backed up.
And Dave, your account seems to confirm some of this reporting that we're getting about a shooter and potential bystanders who were hurt. Just talk more about your initial reaction. I mean, seeing this, you're running for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. You're about to walk up on the stage. You're getting introduced by the former president, and then you hear these shots ring out and the chaos in the crowd. What was going through your mind in that moment?
Well, it takes a minute to process. People started to panic all around. You could feel, people were very scared, and so everybody just dropped to the ground. And it felt very obvious that the president was under assault, and very much at risk. And it wasn't clear that he was okay to begin with. And then, once it started to sink in, you're thinking, are there still shooters out there? Are they going to target other people? And, it's just like these, situations. I was in the military previously. You realize over time that the facts start to come together. So you got to be careful not to draw too many conclusions early on. But I think what we all felt was a sense of, oh my Lord, everybody's in danger because there's clearly a shooter, at least one shooter in the crowd, and maybe more. And really, I think scary for everybody who was there. And shocking, even more than scary, just shocking, because you were in the middle of this rally, and it was kind of fun, and people were enthusiastic, and all of a sudden it was turned upside down.
What does this say to you about our state of division and the politics in this country right now?
Well, I don't want to draw any conclusions before I know more about it, but obviously it's if you're a public official, if you're a presidential candidate, and your safety's at risk, that's scary for all of us, no matter what party you're in. And so I think it's a moment to take stock. And you had 15,000. It seemed it was a huge crowd. I was told by the law enforcement people there are 15,000 people who were enthusiastically supporting their candidate, and all of a sudden, the former president, his life is at risk, and what were peaceful people in the audience are wounded, potentially, fatally. I mean, that's unacceptable, and it's not a matter of party. That's just unacceptable in our great country.
Dave McCormick, thank you for your time. We are so grateful that you are okay. Sadly, as we get this news that potentially some bystanders who were there, at least one, according to the DA, may have been killed. Dave McCormick, thank you for your time. I do want to bring in Donald Mahalik, who is an ABC News contributor, former Secret Service. Donald, just walk us through, you've seen the images right now. Obviously, Secret Service agents trained for this at this moment, but what can you tell us about what played out here?
Well, the Secret Service, this is what they train for. This is what they prepare for. Even the preparatory phase for any of these events is a week or more in planning. And part of the preparation is if an incident happens, whether it's an attack on a protectee or another major incident that could impact the event. What we saw here was something happened, and it sounds like from the Butler's DA that potentially a shooter was involved. So it would be an attempted assassination. Shots fired at the protectee, and the Secret Service moved in expeditiously to form a body bunker around the protectee and evacuate the protectee off the stage and move the protectee to a hard location, and then standard procedure, take the protectee to the hospital to be checked out. Everything on the video looks textbook of what the Secret Service trains to do, which is why they're the world's renowned experts with protection and how they're supposed to perform. It's a sad day in America that this happened, but thankfully it sounds like President Trump is okay, and hopefully they find out why this individual did this, and they can get to the bottom of it.
And Donald, I know we're still getting more information and trying to get confirmation about exactly what happened, but the way you framed it really stood out to me, that the Secret Service would treat this as an attempted assassination, something this country has not seen in a very long time. What defines that in terms of the training and the moment and the response?
Well, threats against public officials have gone up exponentially over the last couple of years, as your previous guest pointed out. And that threat matrix has contributed to these attacks on public officials, local, state, federal. We've seen that increase across the board. In this situation, if there's an attempted assassination against one of our protectees, it just elevates what's going on in the country, what's going on in the world, and it drives a lot of the Secret Service's protective methodology, because the threat matrix around public officials has become so exacerbated and so increased that they have to make sure that they mitigate each and every facet of at an event, which is why, even though at times people complain about some of the security measures at these events, the Secret Service ends up having to dot all I's and cross all T's to make sure that every aspect of an event is secure.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. I want to bring in Elizabeth Newman now, former Department of Homeland Security in the Trump administration. Elizabeth, what more can you tell us about the security procedures and how perhaps the investigation might play out from here?
Well, we're going to be seeing a lot more digging into the suspect, the shooter who we have been told has passed. We're going to be looking to find out where he has been, find out where he obtained the weapons that he used, looking into phones and computers and his online engagement. We know just historically the last 10 years, most mass attacks, most lone actor attacks do tend to radicalize online. They spend a lot of time online. They plan their attacks from various sites online. So I imagine Secret Service and their supporting law enforcement agencies will be digging into his online profile, as well as where he's where he's been the last few days, if he has any associates, if anybody had some indications that something was wrong. We know that most mass attackers tend to have leakage before they commit an attack, which is why we always ask the public, if you detect that somebody is not well, and they start to mention things that are concerning, like they might be trying to plan something to take their own life or to take somebody else's life, to please call police. And that's really important after an event like this. We often do have copycats, or we have other people that are inspired to retaliate to whatever they perceive might be a political action. So this is a time for calm and for the public to stay vigilant. And if you have any concerns about in your life, to somebody in your life that might need help, to don't hesitate to call law enforcement and get help for that person.
Elizabeth Newman, thank you so much. I want to go back to Pierre Thomas in Washington. Pierre, I understand President Biden now has also been briefed by the Secret Service. And we talked with numerous people today about this heightened level of vigilance, heightened security threat level. Now that we're getting reports that potentially there were shots fired, a shooter was killed, and maybe a bystander, that changes everything, doesn't it now?
It does indeed. We're being told by our sources that President Biden is being briefed by Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas and Secret Service Director Cheeto. That gives you a sense of the amount of concern here going. And I can tell you with the Attorney General, but the Attorney General in recent weeks has been openly concerned, telling the staff about his fears about this spike in threats aimed at political figures in this country. That, along with the ongoing war in Israel, the resurgence of ISIS, and basically a lot of sources have been telling me their hair has basically been on fire because, as the FBI director said, he's never seen a situation where virtually every threat zone is elevated. And right now, because this is has the potential of being an assassination plot, we don't know the details of that yet. That's not officially confirmed, but I can tell you that it will be looked at in that way. This is only going to increase the concerns that we're in this very sinister and concerning moment that law enforcement is going to have to factor in going forward. I think every rally that the President Biden, President Trump does going forward is going to have to be reassessed in terms of the level of security that is provided with.
Pierre Thomas, thank you. I do want to bring in Aaron Katursky, our senior investigative correspondent, who's also been talking to law enforcement sources on this. And Aaron, a big part of the conversation in the last half hour or so, since we've been getting more information, is whether or not this was some kind of assassination attempt. What are you learning from your sources?
While it's certainly not being confirmed as such yet, I can tell you that officials who've been briefed on the situation in Pennsylvania are telling us here that they are investigating this now as a possible assassination attempt. The sources told ABC News live rounds were apparently fired from outside the security perimeter, which may help explain some of the dynamics at play here. And we know that magnetometers were in place for the event. But it's believed, one of the angles of investigation now is that live rounds were possibly fired from outside the security perimeter, and that's where the investigation stands at the moment.
And Aaron, you have also been to a lot of these different events, not just various political events from former President Trump, but also his court hearings in New York and the security measures that have been in place at each and every one of them. Talk more about the typical response and how law enforcement would prepare for an event like this.
The planning for these events is always evolving, and it is sometimes months, if not years, in the making, especially for a planned event like a political convention or some kind of rally. And this is what the Secret Service does on a daily basis. And I know colleagues have talked to you about the heightened threat environment and how that environment is dynamic. It's been elevated ever since October 7th, and the political climate in the country has certainly made authorities concerned. We don't know anything about what may have factored into all of this, of course. So this is still very early, but this is now being investigated as a possible assassination attempt, and the suspicion now is that law 5 rounds were fired, apparently from outside the security perimeter.
Aaron Katursky, thank you. And once again, to our viewers who may just be turning in, wondering what's going on here. This incident happening in Butler, Pennsylvania. This was supposed to be a major rally for former President Trump ahead of the Republican National Convention. There were hints that perhaps he might select a possible running mate in the next 48 hours or so. So a lot of attention was on this specific event. And then we heard from witnesses and from our Rachel Scott, who was inside the venue, who said that they described the repeated popping sounds that sounded like gunshots. Then you see in these images and the videos, the Secret Service swarming around the former president, who reached for his right ear as he went down behind the podium. Those Secret Service agents then forming somewhat of a human shield over him before escorting him off the stage. And here you see in these images when Trump got up onto his feet, there were cheers from the crowd. He started pumping his fist as that blood started to trickle down from the top of his right ear. And again, from the district attorney in Butler County, telling ABC News, and this is the only source so far that we've had about the shooter being killed, possible bystander, and maybe another who was also injured in this shooting. But the district attorney giving us that information, saying that they were looking into this right now and told that there was chaos out there as they were investigating the next steps in this case. So once again, if you're just joining us, the former president spokesperson tells us that he is fine. He is safe right now, but no information in terms of an apparent injury, although we did see that blood in some of the photographs that we've seen flash across the screen here. This is a developing story. I want to bring in Brad Garrett, who's one of our law enforcement contributors. Brad, you're familiar with many investigations of a large scale. We've heard right now from a number of sources that law enforcement they're at least looking at this, Brad, as a potential assassination attempt. How does an investigation like that move forward from here?
So obviously what the real key is it contained? Do you know enough at this point? Is this a lone shooter? Is this shooter part of a group? So you want to look at that immediately. You know, based on what the local district attorney is saying, if that is accurate, that you have a shooter down and maybe 2 other people down, you know, that may get answered, I will tell you, through law enforcement, because it's very conceivable that the shooter and these 2 quote unquote bystanders would be shot by law enforcement, because they're going to go to the shot, and there's going to be people, there's going to be snipers around locations, and so they maybe just immediately beat it in on somebody. But to your question about where they're going to go from here, that's going to be the real key. Is this just some disgruntled guy that doesn't like the former president, or is he part of a group that doesn't like the former president, which then could obviously spin into something else. But this may be a lone actor. We just don't know yet.
Brad Garrett, stand by. Again, we're still waiting on some more information here, but I do want to just, forgive me, I'm going to bring you back for just a follow-up question on that exact point, whether they're looking to see if this was a lone actor, if others may have been involved, as I'm still getting information right now. But from the law enforcement perspective, one thing that I thought was interesting there, and we talked about this with John Carl earlier, is it's not just the Secret Service, right? You have multiple law enforcement agencies on the ground at these major events, and Secret Service takes the lead, but they're all working together. We saw some of them come up onto the stage in tactical gear and long guns. How do those partnerships play out in the minutes, the hours, and the days after an event of this magnitude?
So certainly during the event itself, you're exactly right. The Secret Service only has so many people, and they're going to coordinate this with the city, county, and state jurisdictions in, obviously, in this case, the state of Pennsylvania. They will have practiced, trained prior to this event, and maybe, because the president does hold a lot of rallies, have worked together before to cover all the different angles. Obviously, the Secret Service are going to be the immediate response and around the president. But the next layer or 2 layers or rings around security are going to be quite possibly other law enforcement agencies. And to my previous conversation with you, it may have been one of them that got to the shooter or these 2 quote unquote bystanders. But that's the real key. Now, obviously, people reacted quickly. I'll say one other thing without knowing any more, that the shooter may have been some distance away, which is certainly fortunate for the former president. If he'd have been any closer, this would be a bigger tragic event, of course. But the whole key right now is this shooter and what's he all about.
Absolutely. Brad Garrett for us. We appreciate it. I do want to go to Leonard Verdetto, who is an eyewitness who was there at the rally today. He's joining us now on the phone. Leonard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Leonard. We're so grateful that you are okay. Can you just walk us through what happened and what you saw?
Sure, absolutely. So everybody was excited to see the former president coming out. We were all, excited, and we were all happy. We were all joyful. We were all there for each other. Then the former president was giving his speech. Then moments later, there was some, popping sounds that were going off. There were about maybe 6 or 7 to 8 shots that were happening. None of us really registered at the time, but then all people were saying, "Get down, get down." Even I was saying, "Get down." Other people were saying, "Get down" as well. And, we were all praying. We were praying to Yeshua, the Lord Jesus, and we were praying to him to keep us safe, keep us protected. But unfortunately, what happened was, someone did get shot. What I do hear is that I think 2 people did get shot, that to the best of my knowledge. And I believe that, the former president, which I'm glad he is safe. So.
Leonard, and again, we don't have all these things confirmed yet. So, this is your perspective here. But when you say that you believe that 2 people were shot, could you actually see people, potential victims?
What I seen, and to the best of my knowledge, sir, is that and again, I was hearing it from other news sources as well. But what I seen, when I first seen that there was blood on a couple of people. Someone was shot just like about 5 feet right behind us, to be honest with you. So we were that close, and thank God we weren't shot either.
And where were you located? We're looking at the video right now. This is the former president being brought back to his feet after those shots were fired. Were you on the stands behind Donald Trump, or were you in front of him?
If you're looking exactly at him, we'd be on the left side, actually. We were the left side of the other stands where you've seen those big TVs.
So the left side of the stands facing the president or behind the former president?
Facing the president. We were more on the sides, looking on the side of the president, so facing him.
And Leonard, let me just ask you too. Obviously, you go to we've been talking about this, the division in this country, the polarization. But here you are. Obviously, you're exercising your right to support whichever politician you believe in. And you go to an event like this, you don't expect there to be violence. What's in your heart right now?
Well, what's in the heart right now is I'm encouraging the American people to pray to Lord Jesus, because right now our country's divided. I'm a millennial generation. I'm 30 years old, and this is my first time being at a Trump rally. And the reason why I'm supporting the former president is because of the policies that he has to keep the country safe and secure borders and everything like that. So that's why I stand for what he stands for. And I encourage the American people to pray to Lord Jesus that we need to be united as a people. We need to repent, and we need to be healed as a nation, because right now our nation is not going down a good road. So I encourage people to pray, because prayer is a powerful thing.
Well, Leonard Verdetto, we are so thankful that you are okay and that you were able to make it out of there safe. Thank you again for your time. We truly appreciate it. I do want to bring in another witness who was there at this rally today, Robert Rosano. Robert, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Walk me through what you saw, what you heard, and how close were you to the former president as these reported shots rang out?
We were, myself and a good buddy of mine, we were 4 rows back from the center of the former president. Former president was facing directly at us, and it was a good crowd. Everyone was pretty electric. It had been a long day. The heat was kicking in a little bit, but people were happy. People were happy to see the former president speak, and he came out to God Bless America, and the crowd was electric, and it was probably a good 10-15 minutes
into the speech that we started to hear what sounded like gunshots ring out. And we probably heard a good 3 or 4 gunshots that sounded like they were of a smaller caliber, followed by 2 to 3 more much powerful shots, which most folks assumed that it had been from the Secret Service. Now, I know as soon as the gunshots rang out, most of us had hit the ground. It was a scary situation. You're in a fishbowl, with the former president, and you don't know, where the shots are coming from and who they're coming from, and it was a pretty traumatic situation, I think, for everybody. But what we did see following the shots was we saw the president hit the ground. We looked up to the top left-hand side of the stands that were right behind him, and it looked like there were several folks that were still down. It looked like there was some blood that had been there. We also saw some law enforcement folks that had carried out what looked like the body of an individual. Following that, President Trump, he stood back.
Robert, are you still with me? I think we just lost Robert Rosano's connection there, but the account that he gave, pretty terrifying, considering that after the former president was then removed from the stage, it looked like there were people still down in the stands. And we've heard those reports from several witnesses now that there was blood in the stands, that several people had to be carried out. And again, the reports from the district attorney there in Pennsylvania telling us that at least one bystander was killed in this incident, perhaps a second, and that the shooter is dead. We're still waiting on more information from other sources to put all of that together, but I do want to bring in our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, who's been following this. And Martha, you're getting more reaction tonight.
More reaction, and just in from former President Obama saying there's absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. There is multiple reactions such as that, and everyone, of course, glued to the television watching this event play out over and over. I've been talking to people I know in the military who are trained in weapons, and they too said this was probably far away from President Trump, and yet clearly a very, very dangerous situation. If, in fact, he was grazed by a bullet, that would explain why others were injured and possibly killed as well. This colleague from the military, said that he believed they probably, listening to those sounds again and again, said the shooter probably got off a couple of rounds, because we heard those sounds, those explosive sounds, those sounds of gunfire. Several of them said the shooter likely got off a couple of rounds before he was then probably taken out by the Secret Service or whoever was outside that perimeter. But it's true. I mean, we've said this all afternoon. It is almost impossible to completely protect someone as hard as you try.
And Martha, what you're saying and what your sources are telling you lines up with what we've been hearing throughout the night, too, from the witnesses, that they heard several pops. It sounded like gunfire. The first couple were quieter, and then like the louder shots that came afterwards, which some have suggested, including Brad Garrett, our law enforcement expert, also described as potentially law enforcement firing back at the shooter.
Exactly, and I think that is likely what will play out. We obviously have a lot to learn in the coming hours and the coming days, but that makes sense. And also, when you look at President Trump, former President Trump put his hand to his ear and hear that sound, it sounds like it was a while getting to him. So that also would tell you that it was beyond the security perimeter. And that is a big area, a wide open area. People could probably stand quite far away from there. And of course, we know there are long weapons out there.
And as we've been hearing from law enforcement tonight, they are treating this as a potential assassination attempt. Again, trying to get more information, but that's how they're treating it right now until they get those extra details. Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. And I understand that you now have a response specifically from President Biden.
The president is out with a statement, and he notes, of course, that he has been briefed on this. He is watching this unfold from his beach house in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And the president says in this statement, I'm going to read it to you. He says, quote, "I'm grateful to hear that he's safe and doing well. I'm praying for him and his family and for all those who are at the rally as we await further information." The president goes on to say, "Jill and I are grateful to the Secret Service for getting him to safety," adding, "There's no place for this kind of violence in America. We must unite as one nation to condemn it." Of course, we know this moment comes at a point in our nation's history when political rhetoric in this country is extremely divisive. And we are already seeing this incident being politicized. Some Republicans pointing a finger at the president already, arguing, of course, baselessly that President Biden is somehow to blame for this, noting, of course, that President Biden has put at the center of this campaign the argument that Trump is a danger to democracy. But tonight, the statement from the president just now, of course, grateful that Donald Trump is safe and doing well, praying for him, and thankful, of course, for the Secret Service for getting him to safety.
All right, that statement from President Biden. Mary Bruce, thank you. I want to go back to John Santucci, our executive editorial producer. John, you've been in touch with Trump's family.
Eldest son, the former president. He tells ABC News when he has spoken to his father just the last couple of moments, describes former President Trump as